السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. Our Lord states in chapter 37, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: فلما أسلم وتله للجبين وناديناه أن يا إبراهيم قد صدقت الرؤيا إنا كذلك نجزي المحسنين إن هذا لهو البلاء المبين وفديناه بذبح عظيم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. There are questions regarding the season of Muharram and Ashura. Inquiries by many people. Among them is the commemoration itself for almost 2 months. It's not considered innovation and bid'ah. The second question is, don't you think that these type of commemorations and ceremonies and the sessions of Aza, it would entice and provoke disunity among the Muslim Ummah, creates misunderstanding, mistrust, escalates the tension, the hate, and sometimes the bloodshed. We have to address these two questions and answer them. As to the first one, the commemoration of Ashura definitely is not innovation, it's not bid'ah. In fact, it's sunnah. Because the first person who drew attention to the tragedy of Ashura before it took place 50 years was the Prophet himself. And we know that the practice of the Prophet, the sayings of the Prophet, the behavior of the Prophet, the consent of the Prophet are all considered sunnah, tradition, part of his sunnah, which we should follow. The Prophet himself was the first person who commemorated Muharram. Let me show you, my friends. This is the book of Musnad Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who died in 241 Hijri, almost 1200 years ago. In his Musnad, which is volume number 1, Musnad Abdullah ibn Abbas. The chapter is Musnad Abdullah ibn Abbas, Hadith 2165. حدثنا عبد الرحمن حدثنا حماد بن سلمة عن عمار بن أبي عمار عن ابن عباس. Ibn Abbas is the cousin of the Prophet. قال, he says, Ibn Abbas says, رأيت النبي في المنام بنصف النهار. I saw Prophet Muhammad in my dream during the day. أشعث أغبر. He was dusty. The Prophet's face and hair were dusty, covered with dust. معه قارورة, carrying a bottle. فيها دم يلتقطه أو يتبع فيها شيئا. He carries a bottle with him and he's picking up something like a blood and he puts it in that bottle. قال قلت يا رسول الله ما هذا. Ibn Abbas asks the Prophet in the dream. He says to him, Ya Rasulullah, what are you doing? What is this that you are carrying? Whose blood is this? قال صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم, the Prophet answered, دم الحسين وأصحابه. This is the blood of Imam Hussain and his companions. لم أزل أتتبعه منذ اليوم. I've been searching for this blood until I found it today. قال عمار, the narrator whose name is Ammar, فحفظنا ذلك اليوم. We registered the date of that day. فوجدناه قتل ذلك اليوم. We found that day where Ibn Abbas saw the dream and saw the Prophet collecting the blood of Imam Hussain was the day of Ashura, the day where Imam Hussain was murdered. This is in Musnad Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Why do I choose this book? There are many others in the Shia tradition and Sunni tradition. I choose this one specifically on purpose. Because today the Salafi tradition follow Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. The Salafi tradition, their fiqh school, the school of jurisprudence of the Salafi tradition is Hanbali, follows Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And for them, this book, Musnad Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, is sacred. In fact, Ibn Taymiyyah, Shaykh al-Islam, Ahmad ibn Abd al-Halim ibn Taymiyyah, considers every hadith, every story, every narration, every transmission in this book to be authentic. Every single one in this book to be authentic. This is why I choose these books. Otherwise, I have many other sources. I'm coming to the one that even the opponents, they don't doubt. They are not skeptic about it. So the Prophet himself was the one who started this tradition. He initiated the tradition. He began the tradition himself. Not only the Prophet cried for Imam Hussain. On the day of Ashura, the enemies of Imam Hussain cried. Look at the other book. This is Tarikh al-Tabari. The author is Imam Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari. Ibn Jarir has two qualities. One, he's a mufassir. He's called Imam al-Mufassirin. He wrote an exegesis of the Quran, tafsir. His book is very important source of tafsir of the Quran. The second, his book of history, this one, Tarikh al-Tabari, which is equally important. And all other historians who came after him, they copied from his books. Look at here, what he says. This is what volume? This is volume 3, Tarikh al-Tabari. Here, page 336. When Imam Hussain was murdered on the day of Ashura, one of his daughters by the name of Fatima, one of his sisters by the name of Fatima, his sister Zainab, the daughter of Fatima, Zainab alayhi salam, the daughter of Fatima al-Zahra, حين مرت بأخيها الحسين صريعة. She passed by the body of Imam Hussain, laying down on the ground, being cut into pieces. وهي تقول, while she was crying and saying, يا محمداه يا محمداه, O Prophet Muhammad, O Prophet Muhammad, صلى عليك ملائكة السماء, may the angels of heaven pay tribute to you. هذا الحسين بالعراء, your grandson Hussein, this is his body, on sand dune, مرمل بالدماء, covered with blood, مقطع الأعضاء, his body is being decapitated, وبناتك سبايا, your daughters are taken captives, وذريتك مقتلة, and your children are being murdered. قال, the narrator says, فأبكت والله كل عدو وصديق. By God, I witnessed that when Zainab was saying these sentences and talking to her grandfather, the Prophet, and asking for his help, she made every enemy and a friend cry. Even the enemies who murdered Imam Hussain, they cried for that. My friends, the tragedy is not easy. The tragedy deserves our sorrow, deserves that we live in pain for the rest of our life, deserves our tears and more than our tears. Imam Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman, may Allah hasten his reappearance, he says, instead of tears, I would cry blood for you, and I would mourn you morning and evening, every morning and every evening. لأندبنك صباحا ومساء ولأبكين عليك بدل الدموع دما. So the Prophet was the first one. It's not bid'ah. Definitely it's not innovation. It's not something that we created, we organized, we started, we initiated. The commemoration of Imam Hussain, commemoration of the day of Ashura, is something started by the Prophet himself. And with the Prophet, the participants in these commemorations were the angels. Jibreel, the leader of the angels. The messengers of God. The messengers of God, it has been reported, even though they are sitting in heaven in paradise, but they cried for Imam Hussain. They cried for him when God informed them, when they were here on earth. God informed them about the Prophet and his family and what will happen for Imam Hussain. And it cried for him when it took place and they were in heaven. Imam Hussain was on earth. The prophets, the messengers were in heaven. They were crying for Imam Hussain. Mustadrak al-Hakim, one of the credible books and references of hadith in the Sunni tradition, and other sources. On the authority of Abdullah ibn Abbas, he says, ما كنا نشك, we had no shred of doubt, وأهل البيت متوافرون, while the family of the Prophet were still alive, أن الحسين بن علي يقتل بالطف. We had no shred of doubt that Imam Hussain, the son of Imam Ali, will be murdered in the land of Karbala, the Taf. Why does he know this? Why he's certain of this? Because he heard it from the Prophet, beyond any doubt, beyond any skepticism. The Prophet kept reminding the Ummah, the community, that Imam Hussain is going to be murdered. And the Prophet did that not because Hussain is biologically his grandson, so he feels sorry for him. Not just because of that. There was another important element. Imam Hussain is the continuation of the Prophet. Imam Hussain is the representation, is the embodiment of the Prophet's manners, the Prophet message. So when you resurrect Ashura, you are resurrecting Islam. You are keeping Islam strong. You are reminding people of their faith. So this is number one. Question number one. Question number two, is Ashura relevant? Is it really relevant today? Something that happened during certain period of time, 1400 years ago. It took only 6 or 7 hours in a remote land called Karbala. Is it relevant that you keep remembering it? Is it relevant to our time? Is that what we need? Is that what our youth need? Is that what the humanity needs? Is that what we are looking for? Does it provide any solution for our challenges? Does it provide any hope for people who are struggling with inflation, with high prices, with, everything, with pandemics, with diseases, with pain, with suffering, with war? Is it relevant to spend your time on Ashura? My friends, today our countries suffer from dictatorship, from corruption. Corruption not only in the Middle East, corruption in Europe, corruption in North America, corruption in the whole world, political corruption, economic corruption. It suffers from occupation, from negligence, from the irresponsibility, from pain, from war, from refugees, from people being bombed in their schools and their homes and their marketplaces. This is our suffering today. And all these things were addressed by Imam Hussain. Why did he revolt? Imam Hussain revolted. He stood against dictatorship. He stood against corruption. He stood against war. He did not want war. Imam Hussain initiated peace. Imam Hussain stood before that army and said, listen, I don't want war. When his people said, let's begin the fighting, Imam Hussain said, Inni akrahu an abda'ahum biqital. I hate for myself to initiate the war, to initiate the fighting. If I'm being attacked, I would defend myself, but I would not begin the war against anyone. I hate war, though he's very courageous. Not out of fear. Not out of fear for himself, out of fear for the ummah. He didn't want anyone to die. Can you imagine Imam Hussain on the 10th day of Muharram? He stands in the middle of the battlefield and he weeps. His sister, Lady Zainab, comes to him. She says, Ya Aba Abdullah, are you weeping because of fear, because you are going to die? He said, no, I'm not weeping for myself. I'm weeping for this army who have gathered to murder me, and then because of murdering me, they're going to go to hellfire. I am sorry for them. I feel sorry for them, not for myself. This is Imam Hussain. He always felt for others. He always wanted and sought goodness and salvation for others. He always cared about others, even though they are his enemies. But he did not want them to perish. He did not want them to get lost. This is the heart of Imam Hussain. He weeps for his enemies. Imam Hussain, when he meets Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi in Karbala, just before he reached Karbala, in the Iraqi territories, before he came to Karbala, they were thirsty. Hur and his army were thirsty in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere. They did not find water. Imam Hussain asked his companions to give his enemies water. His own enemies who came to arrest him and intercept him, Imam said to his companions, I want you to give them water. Ashura, it's not obsolete. It's not outdated or outmoded. And it is not an occasion to stir hatred or disunity or division. It's not about the past. Ashura, it's about the present. It's about the future. It's about dignity. It's about saving the ummah. It's about bringing about awareness, clarity, understanding, introducing the true version of Islam, the progressive version of Islam, the Islam that is based on love and care, not hate, not a prejudice. Ashura is about inducing us with a sense of responsibility, that we are responsible. We are not on this earth, the planet Earth, just for food and drink and entertainment. We are for a much higher purpose on this land. We are to defend the oppressed, to defend those who are forgotten, those who are being forgotten, those who are being neglected. This is the message of Ashura. So it's relevant to these days. It's not obsolete. It's not an old story. It's a continuous story. Story that happens every day in our backyards, in our communities, within our families, in our countries. It's about fighting oppression. And oppression does exist everywhere nowadays. This is the message of Ashura. Ashura is also a university. You learn things about not just your faith, your life too, your family, your relationship with God, with other human beings, with your friends, with your family members. You know about your responsibilities and duties. You know about your right. It's a campaign of awareness. Ashura discusses every aspect of our life. Economic aspect, political aspect, social aspect, spiritual aspect, discusses the youth, the children, the families, self-building, community building, civic engagement, political activities, economic activities, discusses our affairs, discusses what we need in this life, especially the young generation. It's not only about lamentation and tears, though tears are part of it, because it serves as a reminder. We should not forget our suffering. We should not forget our past. This is the message of Ashura. Imam Hussain, in his sacrifice, remained true with God. And now he wants us to follow his example. He wants us to be true to God. رِجَالٌ صَدَقُوا مَا عَاهَدُوا اللَّهَ عَلَيْهِ. Men who were true in their covenant with God. Now it's our turn. We have to pay him back. Not only through your tears and sorrow, but through your deeds and your actions and your contribution. Ask yourself, my friends, during these nights and days, please ask yourself, take a moment, go somewhere secluded, go into a room, close your eyes, sit, reflect, meditate, and ask yourself, what should I do? How can I help Imam Hussain? What does he want from me? If Imam Hussain is alive today, and I stand before him, and I ask him, oh, the son of the messenger of God, what do you want me to do? What the answer would be? What would be his answer? Do you know? You must know. His answer, Imam Hussain, is going to tell you briefly, I want you to be a better person, a better servant of God. I want you to dedicate every hour of your life for God, to make yourself better, self-improvement, self-building, and community building. And if you cannot build yourself, you would never be able to build your community. Why many people fail in their missions? Because they have not built themselves. And they want to change the whole world. That does not happen, my friends. I have to begin with myself first. Imam Hussain was successful because he started with himself. And then he went to the community. Thus, he was an example. He was an example in every aspect of his life. Imam Hussain never contradicted his actions, never contradicted his speeches. The speech and the action are exactly one, united, no separation between them. When he asked people to go to the battlefield, he was the first one to go, and he sent his children first. The reason why Imam Hussain wanted his family members to die before him, to sacrifice their lives before him, so no one is going to turn and leave. He makes sure that he gives his family, then he will be the last one. They go before him. He has peace of mind that, see, I have given everything I have, now it's my turn. This is why he was the last one. Until he gave his little baby, Abdullah, 6 months old. He gave his baby, and then he went. He left nothing for himself. Now he does not want me to give everything. At least let me give 50%, 40%, 30%, 10%, 2% of my time and my effort back to my community. This is the message of Imam Hussain, my friends. We ask Allah to enlighten our hearts with a message, with his message and the message of Imam Hussain during these holy days and nights, so we can walk on his path, we can follow his steps, and we can be registered among his companions, his Ansar, his helpers. You know, my friends, when I go to visit the shrine of Imam Hussain, when I finish visiting him, I turn to the mausoleum of his companions, and this is what I say. I say to them, "O my masters, O my leaders, O my sweethearts, maybe Imam Hussain on the Day of Judgment will be too busy with others. He would not look at me. I want you, his followers, his companions, his ashab, to look at me with a glance of care and mercy on that day. I have hope in you. My hope is in you. I know Hussein is my master, and he never forgets his servants. But I come to you as my gate to Imam Hussein." This is what I tell them. And I love those companions. I love them. I adore them. Those who had the highest level of ikhlas and sincerity and earnestness. Those who left their women and children behind to go and defend and fight for the truth, for justice, not for this life, for the akhirah. O Allah, give us the chance, the tawfiq, the opportunity, the blessings to be registered among the helpers and the companions and the ashab of our master and our leader, Al-Imam Abu Abdullah Al-Hussein. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.